Hello everyone, welcome back to EverythingSwift. Today we'll be tackling Leetcode question 26 titled Remove Duplicates from Sorted Array. We're given an array of integer here, this parameter, and we're supposed to return an integer. Not an integer array, but an integer. So that's quite interesting. Let's figure out what we're supposed to do. So this question is actually tagged as easy, but I am not too sure whether it's easy. I think the solution, once we understand this question, is quite easy to code it out. But I think, like, given the sheer amount of constraint and information, I don't think it's quite easy. But that's just my point of view. So yeah, let's try and see what we are supposed to do today. Basically, to summarize this lengthy description here, you guys can go ahead and read it at your time. But for the purposes of this video, I'm trying to keep it concise. Basically, the summary of this question is this numbers array here is basically in a sorted order, increasing order, and basically we cannot introduce any extra space to help us out to solve this question. So we only can modify this array in place, and no additional space, like you can't create an extra array or copy an array and those kind of fancy stuff to try and solve this question, right? uh, this example here is pretty clear on what we have to do, so I'm going to use this example to explain. So this is the input array, which is given in this parameter here, and we can see here the output is 2, which is this integer here. And then we can see that they modify the nums array as 1 and 2. So what's going on here, right? So what they're trying to do is basically they found the duplicate, and what they do is sort of like remove the duplicate, but they replace it with the next number, which is the non-duplicated number, right? So 1 and 2. And as explained in this question here, basically once we replace the number, anything else after that last index, uh, they do not care at all, right? So essentially this array here is not the most important, but they just want us to sort of like have the unique values. Basically the first k numbers are not repeated or do not have the duplicated numbers. So as we can see here, 1 is gone, 2 move forward here, 1 and 2 are not duplicated, and we have to keep the order of the array relative as explained in the question as well. So as you can see here, the number is 2 because 1 and 2, and it's basically the first two elements of nouns being 1 and 2 respectively, right? So yeah, like I said, this tag is easy, but I kind of feel like the solution is easy. But to understand and just unpack the whole constraint of the question, I think that's the tough part. But yeah, so I think let's jump straight into the code and see what we're going to do here, and then I kind of explain. I think the code is quite useful for me to explain, so I'll do the coding out solution first, then I'll explain how it works. So if nums.count, basically num is empty, sorry. If nums is empty, basically we'll just return 0. Because if the array is empty, technically there's no duplicates, right? And then now what we're going to do is I'm going to make an index variable here of 1. So the reason why index is 1 here, because regardless of how big the array input is, the first numerical number inside the array is basically the first unique number. So we don't really have to check that, and we can just start with the next number because the first one is definitely a unique number, right? That's the first number we'll encounter in our traversal of array. So I'm just going to leave it right here, setting index as 1 because index 0 num is always unique. So for us to find out whether it is a duplicated value or not, basically we need to traverse the array, and then we can do the comparison. So I'm just going to use a for loop here, and I'm going to start at index 1 because the first number is unique. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to take the index 1 and the current index, basically not index 1, current index, and compare it with the previous index to find out whether it is a duplicate or not. So if and then here num.count, so basically just traversing the array but starting at index 1. And then what we're going to do here is now we're going to do the comparison, right? If nums of index, the current index minus 1 is not equals to nums of the current index, right? So basically, this is for us to know whether there's a duplicate or not. So in the event if it doesn't match up, which means it is no longer a duplicate, you want to go ahead and substitute that value. And how we're going to do that is basically we're going to take the nums of index here, replace it with the current value of our iteration here, which is nums equals to nums I, sorry. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to increment our index. So the index here plays sort of like two roles. One is the value that we need to substitute, and also representing the number of a unique values in the prefix of the array, right? So I'm just once this is done, pretty much that's all we have to do. I'm going to print out the nums array here so that you guys can visualize it easier as well. And then as the output is basically representing the sort of like the non-duplicated numbers inside the array, that is the suffix of the array. What I'm going to do is basically just return index, because that's what index represent as well. So that is pretty much it. This is the entire solution, I believe. Yeah, so I think that's why like the question is tagged as easy, but yeah, like I said, like the description and the amount of constraint, I kind of felt like it wasn't too easy, and coming up with this formula is not exactly the same, not exactly easy for me to kind of like just think it through. But I think I shouldn't talk too much. Let me just try and run this and hopefully that works. Yeah, so as you can see here, this is the modified array here. So it was from 112, it became 12. Basically, these two came from this index 2. We sort of like just replace it in this if block here. Let me just go ahead and submit this just to make sure everything is correct. And there we have it. That is the solution for this question. But yeah, so essentially what's happening here is we are looping through. I'm going to use this example because it's simple enough. So basically, just imagine we start at index 1 because the first number, which is 1 in this case, is unique, right? That's the first value we encounter. So we start the traversal from the index 1, as we can see here. So what we do is we compare it with the previous number. So I minus 1, which in this case I is 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. So index 0, nums of index 0 is 1. And the current index is 1. So is 1 equals to not equals to 1? That's not true. 1 is equals to 1, right? So we do not do anything in that operation. We continue the iteration of the for loop. So now the current index is basically 2, right? So now we are right here, and then 2 minus 1, right? Index 2 minus 1 will give us index 1. So the value of index 1 is 1, and is 1 not the same as 2? Yes, it is. So 1 is not the same as 2. So now we have to go through, go inside this if conditional block here, right? As you can see, the index 1 we have not modified in the first iteration, so nums of index 1 equals to the current value of the index, which is 2, right? So that's how we get that 1 and 2, and then we just increment the index to represent 1 and 2, right? So in this example, they kind of like return underscore for this particular 2, but as they can say here, it does not matter what you leave beyond the return k. The k in this case is 1 and 2. So technically this second index number here doesn't really matter what we do, right? So yeah, so that's all for today for this question. I hope you guys find this helpful. Please feel free to check out my previous video. I did one which is remove duplicates from a linked list. So it's a different kind of question. It's not an array, but it's also removing duplicates. So yeah, just kind of like check it out at your free time. I appreciate your help. Um, but yeah, if you like this kind of video, feel free to like and subscribe and share it with your friends. Thank you for your time. Take care and bye bye.